Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I've got the 10 of Cups as the obstacle and the number 13 card, nameless as it was in the Marseille, known as the Death card, as the opportunity. So let's get into it. Um, the 10 of Cups. Look at this happy family. The what I mentioned in the short that I put out for this was I said, don't sacrifice family or neglect friendships for material desires, or even worse, for misplaced pursuits of parasocial relationships. And I recommended that it might be a good idea to organize a reunion. Now, there's so many different ways of interpreting these cards. It's interesting to see something that on the surface looks so just optimistic and you know it's party time, it's family, there's a fucking rainbow. How can you beat that? So what's the obstacle? One of the really basic, I think, interpretations, seeing these cards, as I often like to read into them, as representations of events that are unfolding before us, right? This could be something as simple as seeing seeing some other family with some kids having fun in a rainbow kind of, what's the rainbow adorned vista, um, and when I mentioned parasocial relationships, I certainly think that one version of this as an obstacle is you open up your Instagram, Facebook, who knows what social media is currently in use, but you open it up and what do you see? Well, it's that other person and their family and their kids that are perfect reflections of their parents, and they're hanging out and they got a beautiful house and this beautiful plot of land, and there's a fucking rainbow, and you look at it and you know I mean, unless you got your ego under control, and or maybe these are people that you care about, there's a good chance that you can compare yourself to these individuals and you know not feel good. You could feel envious or jealous, or sometimes people look for reasons to discredit like the accomplishments. They go, oh yeah, sure, they got a house in the country and there's always rainbows, but they're racists or some, I don't know, whatever. I could have that too if I if uh, if I lied and cheated my way through my career, But yeah, it can inspire a lot of bitterness, and it's just a nasty time. Uh, yeah, one way to, I think, put this into perspective is, first of all, if this is a byproduct of reflecting on other people's accomplishments, um, it can help to remember that nobody's that life isn't a picture or even a video. It's this continuous stream of experiences in time, and one of the things that I always thought would be hilarious as like an antithesis to contemporary social media is, I would love it if there was like a social media platform that only people only made posts when bad things were happening, and it could be one of these things where like anyone that has a smartphone or an Alexa or a whatever, it's like every time that device can hear them crying or arguing or complaining or being in a bad mood, then it would like record a snippet and post that, so you could like check in with all the people that and all you would hear from them is them just being in a horrible mood. You could check in on your favorite celebrity and listen to them fucking being pissed off and complaining and crying about shit. Like, that would certainly be a good thing to balance out what often people interact with, where you only see other people on social media at their best, at their greatest accomplishments, and then also trying to keep up with that, as opposed to maybe cultivating the things that you can cultivate, like the actual relationships in your life, which, you know, it's pretty easy to feel like the things that you have will never live up to the accomplishments of what everyone is sharing online, and it won't, because those are two completely different realities, right? Um, yeah, it could it could really depress people. I think it's one of those things that certainly requires some careful attention. This is one of those things you got to pay attention to. Um, Another interpretation of this as a potential negative is just the all-consuming, orderly nature of what the 10 cards in general represent. Um, this one in the Marseille is represented in an interesting way, because it looks like it's trying to be a 9 with this extra cup. And nines are interesting because they're the only number that's like, it's an odd number, but also it's very nicely subdividable. So in terms of the numerology, it gets the nod of respect. It gets the tip of the hat from all the even numbers, for being orderly and balanced, even though it's also this transformative number of change and growth. But yeah, but all of the tens, one of the characteristics that the tens share in terms of their numerological interpretation is that they are a state of order, an organization that is rigid and can be highly imprisoning, right? It's just there's no room until the radical transformation occurs. In this case, in the form of the suit kind of maturing and evolving to the suit of pentacles in the form of the ace of pentacles. Um, until that happens, it's almost like there's this infinite period of time of stasis. And the Waite 10 makes it look like it's, well, that can't be so bad. It's just you're just perpetually stuck in this super happy family party time rainbow mode, right? Um, but yeah, I think maybe the more like Marseille interpretation would be that, I think this would be someone who is like, who has grown so much and has accomplished so much in their emotional maturity, that they are now this being of pure selfless love, right? So it's like you as an individual that is capable of free will and of volatile spontaneity is like, it's disintegrated, it's gone. All you are is this loving being that is just selflessly acting for the care of and benefit of others, right? Which, hey, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but looking at these interpretations in the context of the tarot in general, I mean, it carries an implication that none of these states are expected to last forever, and that there is the expectations of transitioning, right? And I mean, with this turning into the Ace of Pentacles, an interpretation of this could be that as you as you come closer to being this perfect selfless servant of the people, whether it's your family or your community or whatever, as you really get good at that, right? Because being totally selfless, I mean, it will make you extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, completely dedicating yourself to the service of something else will make you extremely skilled and valuable in whatever is necessary to serve that thing, right? I mean, one of the things that most people have a really hard time doing is essentially becoming their own servant, loving and caring for themselves, uh, without holding anything back, right? But yeah, if you become really good at caring for others, all of a sudden that service, that skill, that care becomes valuable, and you are now seen as this valuable social commodity, right? That could be one interpretation of transitioning into the Ace of Pentacles, right? And just realizing that that kind of selflessness can, like, it has to become a value, like, to someone, and eventually, to yourself, right? Um, but yeah, so I think that there's the interpretation of the obstacle there of essentially dissolving into this kind of service. And so I guess a piece of advice there would be that, you know, when the time comes, it's like you you shouldn't resist, kind of advancing onto that next stage where you can consider what is valuable in a scope larger than just what, let's say, the people you're in service to are asking for or demanding. I guess in a way it could also, I just kind of thought of this now, but I think it's pretty valid. Like, if you're caring for someone, if you're completely invested in the care for someone else, this is like the dangerous AI enslaving humanity problem, I guess. But um, if you're like, oh, I love my parents, I would do anything for them, and they're like, hey, go pick us up some whiskey, you know, well, what are you gonna do? Do you are you are you gonna practice this, like, perfect, Confucian filial piety where you're just, well, they want whiskey, I'll bring them whiskey? Or are you going to be in this position where you're like, well, the only reason I would give them whiskey is because I care for them and I want to help them and I want to do things that are good for them, but just satisfying their immediate desires in this case might actually not be as good as denying them that. So then, what is the real value of your service to someone? Can you actually, can when you're just giving and sacrificing yourself, can sometimes that take the form of you essentially not doing what people want, maybe even forcing the opposite of what people want, because ultimately it is what's best for them? And yeah, and in science fiction, this is like, you build an AI to watch over to protect a society, and it says, "What are my directives?" And you're like, "Well, make sure no people ever get hurt anymore." And it's like, okay, and it just, sedates everyone, puts everyone in a medically induced coma, feeds them through tubes. You didn't say that you wanted them to be conscious. It's like, this way everyone will be 100% safe. And like, yeah, considering what is of value when you are exercising that kind of selflessness. And then the number 13. Yeah, it's interesting that the Marseille card, didn't have the name, and it had the skeleton, and then Waite comes along, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna call this the death card." Obviously, you know, it's kind of intense. It's an interesting inversion of the Fool, which has a name but doesn't have a number, or I mean, he's got his number is 0. So you know what? Let me just double check. Am I going under the presumption of? So I just got my deck here. I think I got it pretty organized. Court cards. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if the Fool is 0 or if it's just nothing in the Marseille. It's nothing. Yeah, see that? Sorry, I had the microphone cord in my mouth. Okay, so that's interesting because in the Waite it does say 0 instead of just, in the Marseille it's just a blank. It doesn't even have, 0 is a number. It is an abstraction of an amount of things, the same way that 13 is an abstraction of an amount of things. But yeah, this is interesting. I'll have to give that some more thought and study. But why call it death? It's pretty intense, you know. Uh, when I was doing in-person readings, this would pop up, and most people, you could just tell they would not react, in an enthusiastic manner. And then, all the explanations, all the contemporary explanations. Look, man, the major arcana goes goes to 21. Death isn't 21. If the death was like, if this represented the end of some sort, it would be 21. It would be right at the end. You're done, right? It's not. It almost comes in the middle. It's 13. It's in that sense, it shares a lot in common with the three, with the Empress, as well as all of the number threes from the four suits. And yeah, I really like. I think that I think that the 13, the Arcanum 13, like in the Marseille deck, I think it does a much better job at symbolizing the the kind of the violence of nature. I really like that term. That the Empress, I don't think, does as good of a job representing visually. Um, but yeah, I just see this card as representing. It's like we've come around once again to this, to stage three, where things are going through changes. The number three, like the 5, 7, and 9, are the numbers of transition, transformation, change, and the three is at that. It's on that first level of the numerological order of things, and it's not really about people. It's not really about abstractions or high concepts. It's just like nature, things of the earth. So this skeleton here, it's like mowing this field. I think this is, representative of like the earth and organic matter growing and changing and, being, dying, being reborn. Um, the different the different roles that people play changing over time. There's like these extremely poorly drawn hands, and then there's like a really well drawn hand. I kind of like the idea of, thinking about how like, when you were like 1 year old, I mean, were your hands the same hands? Like they were a different size, but they were still your hands. It's not like you've ever had different hands, but they were different hands. But as we grow and we go through these changes, it's like the parts of our body that we still identify as being the same parts. It's almost like they got cut off and replaced with this new hand that does new things. Um, if you play a musical instrument, particularly if you've ever gotten good at a particular instrument, there's this amazing sensation of watching your own hands as they move up and down a piano or up and down the fretboard of a guitar. Sometimes, like, it it could almost feel like what I imagine alien hand syndrome is like, or just like my hand is, it's just moving faster than what you're consciously willing it to do. Once you get to the point where it's like on autopilot. Just thinking about other autopilot hand movements. Get your mind out of the gutter. Um, but but yeah, in terms of transformations, I think this card is symbolic of the kind of physical low order, transformations of nature or of our bodies, but just on a physical level, not as much as like who we are as people, how we interact with people so much. Um, with this one for the short, I mentioned that revolutions can induce fear at the prospect of total losses, but I think it's valuable to think of them as acts of selection, separating what is valuable from what is useless, like separating the wheat from the chaff, that kind of analogy, and enjoying what is revealed in the process as useful. Um, and I kind of like to see the black field that the skeletal figure in the number 13 card is mowing. I like to think of that black field as kind of representing the subconscious, the unconscious, the all of the kind of volatility and changes in the world, as they're like, that's the field all these different things grow from. Um, specializations, skills that we develop as like reactions and responses to a changing world, the positions that we often find ourselves growing into, like this sort of king and queen characters heads, are they beheaded? Are they growing out of the soil of volatility and change? Um, but yeah, but I think it's I think this card sort of, to me, it symbolizes there's always there's always all of these growths. There's all these plants, metaphorically speaking, that grow out of the volatility of life and the passage of time, and you can engage in an act of regularly kind of reaping the harvest. And it's also kind of similar, to this idea of when I recommended like organize a reunion, like have some sort of get together, right? I think that this card might be a pretty interesting representation of something like the kind of internal self-reflection that people do on their birthday, on New Year's, or, a major kind of life event, a major milestone. And sometimes you have this kind of act of like, okay, like what has grown out of this field of life so far? And then you know the scythe, like there are etymological roots that relate it to the word science, right? As like, to do science, you cut things into pieces. You you take you take the flesh of an animal, and you separate the fat from the meat. Like that's like one of the Sindere, like that's science kind of comes from that. It's like you're you're cutting away. It's like, not, this is useless to me. I don't need this. I'm going to eat this. This is valuable. Or like, this I will eat. This will turn into, I don't know what they used fat for, waterproofing things, making torches. Who knows, right? Um, but yeah, so I kind of see this as like the scientific act of kind of going over all the things that have sprung up in your life through the volatility of just life events and changes. And it's this kind of revolution where you go, okay, hold on, let's like, we're just gonna we're just gonna focus our attention on all these things, and then we're gonna decide, what are we getting rid of, what is useless, what are the things that are of value. um yeah, someone someone intelligent, someone more intelligent than me said that, revolutions and revolutionaries are useless if they don't reveal something valuable. That just thinking of revolutions as like, yeah, burn it down, the system sucks, like that kind of stuff. It's like there's nothing great or noble about engaging in the kind of revolution that doesn't overturn stones to reveal something new and useful. Um, and I kind of see this card as being representative of that kind of an act. Yeah, some stuff to think about. Thanks for thanks for watching the video. Drop me a like if you had a good time, and a comment if you would like to be entered into a draw for a free reading. I guess maybe comment something like "free reading, please." I was thinking it might deter people from saying hi who are like, I want to say hi, but I'm scared to engage in a one-on-one reading. Some people are pretty antisocial. That's fine with me. Or introverted. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care.